You are listening to Three Kitchens Podcast, a member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. We release a new episode every Tuesday. Come join us for a new recipe and a good story. Today's episode of Three Kitchens Podcast is brought to you by the Edmonton Community Foundation. The foundation acts as a bridge between donors and charities to create a strong, vibrant community for generations to come. Anyone can start an endowment fund with the Edmonton Community Foundation. Once it reaches $10,000, it can start distributing funds. To learn more, visit ecfoundation.org.
Welcome to Three Kitchens Podcast, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We are your hosts. I am Heather Dyer, and I'm here with Erin Walker.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Erin.
I'm so excited to be here, just hanging out with you. I feel like it's been a while since we've been in studio, just the two of us.
In studio. I always laugh at that because of where I'm just sitting in my bedroom at the moment.
Yeah.
As you are.
As I am also. Yeah. Okay. I heard the most interesting story that has to do with AI, or artificial intelligence, machine learning, and recipes.
Oh, okay.
So somebody has gone and taken some computer technology knowledge and baked the most average chocolate chip cookie.
Average. Why would you aspire to an average cookie?
So here's how it worked.
Oh,
They got this program to scour the internet for every single chocolate chip cookie recipe that they could find. And then they went and took all the ingredients that it compiled together and averaged them.
Okay.
It was over 200 recipes that they went through, and they had 60 ingredients.
What?
So because different people add like a single small tiny amount of some special ingredient, instead of sort of reducing it down to just the top 10 ingredients or whatever, they decided to keep all of them. And so they went and did this on like a scientific scale where it was like 0.0002 cups of applesauce and all these types of crazy things to bake the most average chocolate chip cookie.
Okay.
And it turned out pretty darn good. It was an average chocolate chip cookie. The computer did a good job of compiling all this. It all averaged out fine, and it was a decent chocolate chip cookie. They also decided to then test some of these artificial intelligence systems on making cookies as well. And so one of the things they did was trying to write a cookie recipe using the predictive text. So you know how when you type in the first couple words, it then predicts what it should say? This didn't turn out so great.
Oh no.
If you can imagine. It kept telling you to do the same things again and again, somewhat senselessly. And because this was based on how recipes are written, but it didn't really understand that you don't add sugar 4 or 5 times within a recipe.
Okay. Yeah.
So it made a terrible cookie. But they did try this. They tried it out and tried to cook the cookie. And I think it added way too much butter at the end. It was something ridiculous. And so it was this giant cookie.
How do you know when to stop? Because that predictive text can just keep going and going and going and going. Like when do you decide now we have our recipe?
That's a good question. I'm not sure exactly how they would have trained it to do this, but I'm assuming they just typed in recipe after recipe, and I'm assuming it would finish with the steps of bake at such and such for so and so many minutes would have been the end of the recipe. And then the third way that they tried to do it is they taught this system how recipes are written, and then they got it to write its own recipe. And what came out of that recipe was nothing like a cookie.
Oh, why?
Right?
So you'd think that would be pretty easy for it to go comb the internet and come back with a cookie recipe.
Well, because it's not combing the internet, you're actually trying to teach it how to write a recipe. In the end, you want it to create this end product that we know what a cookie looks like. We know that it's got certain qualities to it that really aren't described in any recipe. That end point, that end product, the computer has no idea what it is. So when it's writing a recipe, it's just kind of like grabbing ideas.
So wouldn't it find cookie recipe and grab something from maybe, you know what? Let me just stop myself. I don't understand how these things work. And I honestly don't care one tiny bit. My husband is fascinated with this shit. And I'm like, I don't want to hear another story about what chat GTP or GPA or whatever the frick it's called. I don't want to know what it does. It scares the crap out of me. I don't want a computer taking over the world.
That's the interesting part of this is they trained this program, like collect ingredients and then write a method. And it trained it to do this. It's like this wacko.
It is so wacko.
Like you said, your husband's fascinated by these things. We have all these programs that can write essays and all this kind of stuff for us. But at the end of the day, they don't actually know what the quality product is or what it's producing at the end. And it has no real true understanding of the meaning of any of the words.
Yeah, just you wait. They're taking over the world.
But I think this is a great example of how you need like human input.
Well, a computer cannot taste the recipe.
No. Like it really shows that like the recipe is more than just a list of ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
You can take those same ingredients and you can make them into so many different things just based on how the method is and how you combine it. And that's like that has been my biggest learning curve since we've started podcasting now and doing more cooking and growing in the kitchen, is that because I take the same recipes I've been making for at least a decade and I make them better now because I know better methods.
A lot of times the way a recipe is written doesn't tell you the method either. Sorry, you almost spit it in your tea. How many times have we tried to make something? It's like, but I did what I thought it meant when I read it. Like I did what it said, but it didn't turn out the way it was supposed to turn out. Of what went wrong? It's because really difficult to describe the method and the result that you're supposed to get. And so how do you know if you've done it right if you can't figure that out? Like it's very interesting.
Fun times.
Totally.
Anyway,
weird.
You still can't get computers to cook for you, which is why you should pay attention closely to what we have to say to you.
Yes. And I said in the social post, listen, this is why we are doing this podcast. You can listen to us, and by the end of the episode, you will know how to make the beautiful thing as best as we can tell you. And you don't have to make the mistakes, or hopefully you can avoid the mistakes we've made and save yourself a lot of hassle and frustration, because we have given you the benefit of our trial and error and learning.
Similar to this is Gennaro Contaldo, our good friend, you know.
He's our good friend.
He's our good friend.
Hello, beautiful people.
He posted about how much money you can save. He did a post recently about how much money you can save just by cooking at home and how you can enjoy your cooking so much more just by upping your technique in the kitchen. And I thought, that's right. Even as a home cook, you can do this.
Oh, totally. We're getting good at some things and starting at zero with others.
That's what we do.
Yep, exactly. Okay, let's get to some food. So Easter's coming. I can't believe Easter actually is not that far away. Like,
did you already eat through the bag of robin's eggs I sent you?
Long time ago. Are you kidding me? Well, with Easter around the corner, I'm going to make for us hot cross buns. I have never made hot cross buns.
I'm super duper excited you're doing this. I've wanted to make these for years.
You haven't made them either?
I've never made them. No.
No, I haven't.
But they're on my bucket list of baking items.
Oh God. Well, I hope I can. It feels like pressure.
It's okay, Heather. I know you'll make them perfect with no error.
Wow. Well, as I was looking up hot cross buns, it turns out they have like a super long history. And I'm talking like back to the Saxons, like so long ago. Apparently they ate buns marked with crosses in honor of Ostra, the goddess of spring or light, which eventually was the name for Easter.
Okay.
And there has been similar practices written about the Druids, the Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Romans would eat buns marked with crosses in honor of Diana, the goddess of the hunt, and the moon. So this all predates Christianity, where eventually the Bible says that around 600 BC or so. The leaders didn't really like this pagan practice and they wanted it to be a Christian thing. And so they adopted it and made it into
if we can't get rid of it, then we'll just make it our own.
Or maybe we can all just enjoy it. So it was adapted by Christianity at some point along the way. And now it's sort of a symbol of Good Friday. And it's a tradition among many Christians to have hot cross buns on Good Friday.
Wow, I had no idea how far back this went.
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy.
I imagine the recipe has probably evolved somewhat. Oh, there was even, now where did I read something here? Oh, it says here, if you were to go to Pompeii today, you could see the remains of buns with crosses on them in an ancient bakehouse.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Isn't that amazing? Okay, well, and there's more, of course, the history continues and it evolves, but it goes back a really long way. So if you were to Google hot cross bun recipe, you can find them in there's chocolate hot cross buns, there's apple cinnamon hot cross buns, there's like everything you can do with a bread bun. It's pretty much been done with a hot crust bun. But a traditional hot crust bun, it's a white yeast bun with usually has some sort of spices, cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, and dried fruit like currants. Currants are sort of the staple. And then beyond that, of course, you can make it whatever you want. And one thing I did not realize is the cross on the top is a flour paste. It's just flour and water mixed together to make a thick paste, and then it's piped on the cross and then it bakes onto it.
I find that so hard to believe.
Yeah, so I guess once it's done and cooled, you could then use icing over top of the cross, but to make the cross itself on the bun, it's a flour paste.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is there usually a glaze on top?
Yes, sugar and castor sugar and water, just a basic glaze. And that's it. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to put in mine. I'm not a big fan of those little dried currants. Not my favorite. I think there's better dried fruit options probably.
I'm thinking of like candied fruit peels. Like get like chopped up into little pieces, like it almost like what you put in a fruit cake.
Yes. Yeah, which I'm not, well, I don't love fruit cake. I don't like the base of the cake. It's not really about the fruit, but.
Right.
So I am going to continue my search variety and see which ones I decide to go with. You know, I've never had a homemade hot crust bun, and I just think it must be worlds different.
That's a good point. I don't think I've had any that have not been somewhat factory baked or produced.
Yeah, you know, it kind of is like, it's okay, but it's like,
I like the sweetness of them, and I like the little bits of fruit in them and that sweet glaze on top. I can't believe that the cross is just
flour
and water. I'm so like,
isn't that weird? Sometimes I've seen some where they just slit a cross in the top so that it sort of splits a little bit when it bakes. And that gives you kind of the frame of the cross to pipe icing or whatever you want on the top. Like you could do a cream cheese icing or something.
Ooh, these are sounding more like dessert as you keep going, and that makes me...
I don't know. Here, look, I'm looking at a picture right now where someone has taken a hot crust bun, cut it in half, put cold cuts and pickles inside, and it's a sandwich. So that is not
That dessert. Doesn't excite me as much.
No. No, not as good. This episode is brought to you by Taproot Spotlight, a service that helps businesses and organizations pay attention to the people they serve. Taproot tells you the news about the people and companies that are important to you. Use that information internally to keep everyone on the same page, or share it with the world in your newsletter, on your website, and on your social media channels. Paying attention pays dividends. Find out more at taprootpublishing.ca/spotlight. That's taprootpublishing.ca/spotlight. Okay, let's talk hot cross buns. Hot cross buns.
This was my husband's question. Did your children play this on the recorder for you while you baked it?
1 penny to a penny. Hot cross buns. Oh, God. Oh, that would be really annoying. You know why it's extra annoying in my house? Is because the dog sings along.
Because, your dog
She can't help herself. He marches around and the dog howls, and the whole thing is just like chaos. No. Let me tell you about hot cross buns. I tried to stick with a more traditional recipe.
Right.
Remember we talked about how there were like all kinds of variations? And now that
Yep.
I've made it once, I would totally try those other variations just because it could be kind of fun.
Right.
But this was quite traditional. I did change, well, only one thing really. Okay.
Okay.
It's a very easy dough to make in the mixer and the dough hook.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to put in your dry ingredients. As always, check your yeast. My yeast, I realized the best before date had passed, and I was like, oh no, do I have to make another trip to the store? But I tested it, and it was still active, so phew, all good.
How do you usually test your yeast?
So put like a teaspoon of the dry yeast in a little bowl,
Okay.
and I think another teaspoon or maybe 2 teaspoons, something like that, of sugar, and then a couple tablespoons of warm water, maybe even a quarter cup of warm water, and then let it sit for 10 minutes. The yeast needs the sugar to feed on, right?
Right. It needs to get excited.
And the warm water to make it happen. And so if it gets frothy and foamy within 10 minutes, it's alive. And if it doesn't,
She did.
yep, it was all good. It was good this time. But I'm like, I think since the date's passed, I probably should pick up another jar. This recipe also called for castor sugar, which is not something we typically see here. I think it's more of a name they use in the UK.
Okay.
It's super fine. If you ever see super fine sugar, that's what castor sugar is. So it's between a granulated white sugar and an icing, like a confectioner sugar. It's not as powdery as like an icing sugar, but it's not as coarse as a granulated sugar. So what you can do, I looked it up, because I did not have super fine sugar and I was not going out of my way to get it. You can put your sugar into your food processor and pulse it just quickly a few times. Not too much. You don't want it to be powder.
Okay.
But you want it to be just a little more fine than it was to start with. There you go.
Oh, I've always just substituted powdered sugar for that because I'm lazy and I've never Googled it before.
I wouldn't even probably worry if it was granulated sugar. I'm sure it's still going to work just fine. But if you want to create your own castor superfine sugar, there you can.
Good to know.
Okay, so 640 grams of flour, all-purpose or bread flour. I had all-purpose, so that's what I used. 3 tablespoons of instant yeast, half a cup or 110 grams of the sugar, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of allspice, half a teaspoon of salt, and you put all that in your bowl with you've got your dough hook on there already, and just turn it around a few times to kind of get it mixed a bit. Then you're going to add your liquid into it and start it going. Like, it's just super easy. So your liquid is 3.5 tablespoons or 50 grams of unsalted butter melted and cooled, 1 egg, the zest from 1 to 2 oranges, and 1.5 cups or 375 mils of warm milk. So put it in the microwave for about 40 seconds or so that it's warm but not hot. If it's too hot, you'll kill your yeast.
Right.
But you need it a little bit warm. So you're going to just put all of that in with your dry ingredients and set the dough hook going at like a level 2 on your mixer. You can do this by hand as well, but you know me, I'm not going to be doing it by hand. Who am I, Erin Walker? Come on. So the recipe said to let it go for 5 minutes. I look in my bowl, it's still very sticky. It's not coming away from the side. So I added a little bit of flour until it pulled away from the side and was not quite so sticky, which I think was maybe a little less than a quarter cup extra flour.
Oh, okay. Just a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, I completely left out the fruit. Well, shoot. Okay. I'm like, what's missing here? The fruit. It's a very essential part of your hot cross buns is the dried fruit that goes inside. So this recipe called for 210 grams, about a cup and a half of raisins. I used raisins and mixed citrus peel, which is that candied lemon orange peel that you buy in the little jam jar, and it looks like little cut up peels that are all sugary and sweet. Oh yeah,
that stuff is the best.
So good. And so I used a combination, more citrus peel but some raisins. It all goes in together and you just let it go with the dough hook. Okay, sorry about that. And then I got it all out of the bowl and put it on my counter and just sort of kneaded it the last bit just to pull it together. And it should be kind of smooth and not like, you know, when you sort of like bend it or pull it a little bit and it looks like it's breaking. You want it to be more smooth. So knead it until it looks like a smooth dough. Make your ball, put it back in your bowl, and cover it with plastic. Or I guess you could probably do a tea towel on there.
Right. Sometimes I put like a plate on top of the bowl and a tea towel over top.
Because I know you're not a plastic wrap.
I have lived without plastic wrap for a whole year now.
Okay, so leave the dough in the bowl, cover and place in a warm, wind-free place to rise until it doubles in size. This is your first rise.
Okay.
The recipe says it takes between 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on temperature and moisture, and I don't know. But she also had a trick that I thought was kind of fun.
Okay.
And she claims she uses it year-round. So run your clothing dryer for 2 minutes, empty.
Okay.
Stop it, put your bowl in the hot dryer, shut the door. And apparently 40 minutes is all it needs.
Interesting.
So I did this.
Okay.
I tried this, and after 40 minutes, I go back down to the laundry room and I check the dryer, and it really hadn't risen a whole bunch. So I'm like,
okay.
I don't know where she lives. I don't think she's accounting for the temperatures we get here in the winter. Yeah. And it has been very cold the last few days.
And I would say I noticed that my dryer is cold when I open it because
the vent to the outside. Yeah.
Cold.
Yeah. So, so I did it again. I took the bowl out. I turned the dryer on for 2 minutes, turned it off, popped that bowl back in, shut the door, and set my timer for another 40 minutes. And after that, it was nice and big. It had like doubled in size. So it does work, but it might take you longer than 40 minutes. It's kind of a fun little experiment though.
No kidding. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she's one of those people who has her laundry in her kitchen. You know how we see that in European kitchens where they have the laundry in the kitchen? See, now it's all starting to make sense.
Yeah, that could be. Okay, so now you're going to, you can either continue on, form your balls, and move on to your second rise of your dough, or like I did, you can do this part and then put it in the fridge overnight. So pound it down a little bit, spread it out in kind of like a log.
Okay.
Like a long sort of log on your countertop. And then with the pastry cutter, I just cut it into roughly equal pieces. The recipe says you can make 12 buns. These would be quite large buns. And actually the comments on the recipe said that. So I decided to go by weight. I went by the size of ball I thought looked like a nice little bun, and it was about 72 grams. So I just weighed every piece, and I think I ended up with 18 or 19 buns. So I just weighed them. Then they're the same size. I think it's the easiest way. That was a little trick I learned from either you or Sarah. I can't remember which of you talked about weighing the dough. Sounds like a Sarah move.
I think that's
we can thank her for that. It's very handy.
We will thank Sarah for that. Yeah, it is so much easier than trying to make them all the same size by visual approximation.
Yeah, exactly. And you want them to be kind of smooth, round on the top, right? So kind of pull it together like I picture it kind of like a dumpling, like if you were to gather it all up at the top and then turn it over in your hand and kind of roll it a little bit so that the part you gathered together is going to be on the bottom, and put that into like a 9x16 cake pan. Okay. Line it with parchment paper so you can lift them out of there all together at the end. So when you've rolled them all and put them in your pan, then put them in the fridge if you're doing this overnight like I did.
Okay.
Cover it loosely with some saran wrap. Put it in the fridge overnight. Then in the morning, get up and take it out and bring it to room temperature. I put mine in the oven with the light on for enough heat to warm it up a bit. And then you want to do your second rise at that point. I did not put it back in the dryer. Although I think you could.
Totally.
2 hours until I decided I was ready to get off the couch where I was drinking coffee and bake my buns.
Okay, question for you then. Do you have a proofing drawer with your oven?
No.
Okay. No. So I think that's what the bottom drawer in your range is for. If you have like a...
I do not have that, but I know what you mean because I've had those types before.
So it's not just for storing all of your pans, higgledy-piggledy.
I always thought that's exactly what that was for. Like, it's a storage drawer.
It's a storage drawer. No, it's a proofing drawer.
Oh.
So in my case, I have to take all of the clutter that I have in there out because Yes, it primarily functions as a storage drawer, but you can put your buns in there for proofing. And I find that it's really great, especially because we're cold climate people.
Do you turn the oven on while you've got something in there?
Yeah.
So like while you're preheating your oven?
Preheat your oven, pop your buns in there. It takes about 30 minutes to proof them, and it does a much better and more consistent job than I find. Like sometimes I put them in front of the heating register to try and get that warm air.
Now you could try the dryer.
If you have a range, you can also use your proofing drawer.
Nice. I do not. I have a wall oven. It doesn't have a proofing drawer.
Right. The light on in the oven is also a good idea, though.
Yeah, it worked just fine. And they don't double in size the second time. They'll get maybe 50% bigger. They just kind of fill the pan a little bit. Okay, now before you bake them, you need to add your crosses. Of course, the iconic symbol of the hot cross bun, which is how they knew it was a hot cross bun at Pompeii.
It's not just a hot bun, it's a hot cross bun.
Exactly. And this is made with mixing together 75 grams of flour with 5 tablespoons of water, and it makes this. Just mix it in a bowl, makes this nice white paste. Then put that into a pastry bag or a Ziploc bag and snip off the end.
Okay.
And then you're just going to pipe it over top. Just do them in a row. I did this in the video, you can see, instead of trying to do an X on each one.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, really easy. And then that's it. Then you're going to bake them. Okay, you've preheated while you're putting your crosses on, preheat your oven, or while you're proofing, if you're putting them in your drawer, to 350. And they're going to bake for about 25 minutes. Well, they bake 25 minutes for me. The recipe says 22, but it needed a couple extra minutes for me. And the tops should be golden brown. I think you can determine how dark you want that to be. Some buns, when you see them, are quite dark. So, I mean, I think that's up to you. Okay, and then you're just going to lift them out on the parchment onto a cooling rack and brush them with a glaze. I used a apricot jam, warmed up in the microwave, mix a little water in there and put it on. You could do honey. You do that while they're warm because it kind of melts onto them, and then allow them to cool until they're warm. They're best when they're warm. And everybody says they don't keep well. So eat them the same day. And this recipe, considering it made like a lot of buns, I'm thinking if you're not feeding a crowd, I would cut it in half because it is a lot. Okay, there. As usual, I feel like I'm all over the place talking about how to make them. That's just fun. Everybody knows me now. And you ate buns. We all ate buns.
This was breakfast this morning. Heather was up bright and early baking buns. I was sleeping.
No, you weren't. You were making bread.
I was making bread and doing stuff, but
you were making homemade marshmallows when I popped in.
Oh, that's right.
So, there you go.
These were delicious. So my husband opened them up and he's like, aren't these just like raisin bread? And I was like, oh, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought about what they're like.
I guess they kind of are like raisin bread.
They're kind of like a raisin bread bun. And I was like, oh, that's a good description. He's like, oh, but they have more stuff in them as he started eating them. Because when he initially saw them, he just saw like the spicy bread with you could see the cinnamon in there and the little raisins. So he thought it was just raisin bread in a bun, but it's so much better than that. So I filled myself up quite nicely. The crosses have like a chewy, something yummy texture that I still can't believe is just flour and water. Because I peeled some of it off and I was like, why is this so delicious? Why do I love flour and water so much?
I always thought it was like a sweetened something that was on there. I know.
Yeah. So strange. But yeah. Oh, these are so much better than anything I've ever eaten from the store. These were the hot cross buns of my dreams.
Nice.
I love the spice in there. I didn't realize there was also orange zest in the dough because I was like, oh, the citrus in here is so like, it's so there. And so like I had it without the jam and just like tried it with just some butter, and I was like, oh, it is still so citrusy. And I think it's that orange peel that you put in there. So now I don't have to bake my own hot cross buns because Heather is going to bake them for me.
I would totally bake these again.
Yeah.
I love them too. I've never been a huge fan of hot cross buns because we always get them from the store.
Yeah, these were so nice and moist too. Like the bread was,
I would say they were a little more dense than a dinner roll, but I actually kind of like it. I think that's like helps hold the fruit
Yeah.
and everything that's going on in there, because otherwise, when you have like something that's lighter and the fruit kind of just wanders around, like
it all settles to the bottom.
yeah. I think it needed to be a little more dense because you've got that stuff in there. That yummy.
Yeah, and I feel like you're eating these as they are. Like you sent it with jam, so you're going to eat this bun.
Yeah, you're not making a sandwich with it, or
you're not making a ham sandwich out of this. I don't know what that nonsense was you found. No, thank you.
No.
I just want to eat just that bread. I really liked the flavors in there.
Me too. And right out of the oven, just like...
I bet your house smelled amazing.
Oh, yeah. And they're just like, if you can do it the night before, prep it like that. And then in the morning, like I got up and you can have that ready for breakfast on Easter. Warm buns. Oh, yum. So good. I put that apricot jam on it and I sent it.
Yes.
I gave some to you too because I thought it was quite good on them. I didn't make it, but if you at home want to make an apricot jam, I think I did it last year at Easter for the Pascha Ukrainian bread.
You and Easter and breads.
I don't know what's happened.
You're holding a pattern.
Well, I made that. Do you remember that apricot jam that I made?
Yes.
It was from the food blog Lord Byron's Kitchen.
That's right.
Remember we had a little giggle about him being called the Lord? And then he came on our Instagram and said, I'm not really a Lord. And we were like,
and he has a whole thing about how he likes cats and knitting and sweets and Christmas. Yeah.
He's got a ton of great recipes, actually. And his super simple, easy jam made with dried apricots, which anybody can buy any time of year. Really tasty. So if you wanted to, you could totally make your own little jar jam as well. And that would be delicious.
We did that after you sent us some of your jam because my one son just absolutely freaking loved it so much. And I was like, well, I'll just buy him apricot jam. And he was all, this isn't the same, Mummy.
Oh, no.
I was like, well, no, it's not. I want the other stuff, Mummy.
He doesn't really talk that way.
He doesn't, but he can be a food critic in his own right. So
they get so spoiled with all these like made from scratch things that then they don't want it. Like my husband, he loves hot cross buns as well. And he'd never had a homemade hot cross bun. And he was like, this doesn't even compare. I don't ever want those store-bought buns.
Don't ever bring those in my house again.
He's like, I will never eat a store-bought hot cross bun again. These are so good. So now I think I'm going to be...
You're the Easter bread lady.
Oh, the Easter bread. Well, this is a relatively easy... The Pascha from last year.
Yes, this sounds a lot more manageable than the Pascha bread that... I didn't have to send you any incantations.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe...
Hey, anything you bake or cook can benefit from an incantation, I believe.
If you think the hot cross buns from the store are subpar, you're right. They are.
Right.
Make these ones.
Make your own. So yummy. And don't forget the mixed chopped, what's it called? The citrus.
Mixed peel?
I think it's mixed citrus peel or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called, it's like in the baking aisle. It's just a little container of looks like chopped up lemon peels.
Kind of lives where your maraschino cherries.
Yes.
Oh, they're so tasty.
Oh my God, so good. I've seen so many recipes with chocolate chips that I feel like I may need to. Well, it's not like I won't enjoy eating it. I'll eat my share of them.
Yeah.
And now for the fine print. Join us over on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Pinterest, and on our website at threekitchenspodcast.com. And remember, when you like, follow, subscribe, and review, it helps more people find us. Thank you so much for listening. I feel like I've taken this in the wrong direction.